Hi guys, how's it? Kia ora, tama kiwi whanau, good day to everyone else, and howdy once again from another hot day here in North Texas. What a weekend. Actually, more than a week of rugby that we've gotten to get here all around the world. International test season. It's always my favorite time of year. Kind of going back to last year is when I really started kicking this thing off the ground, doing live broadcasts of all the Springbok games, the All Blacks games, all that kind of stuff, getting up early in the morning, making it very rudimentary. I didn't have a studio. It was just me in my living room, just kind of recording, and kind of a year to look back and like, wow, how things have changed. And even in the world of rugby, not just in the world, but in the world of rugby. We kind of hadn't seen the Springboks in action in so long, and then they came back for the British and Irish Lions tour, and it kind of just got off on the road at that point. But we're back once again in international test season. I'm going to run through some of the scores from some of these games. Now, I'm not even going to sit here and lie. I did not watch every single one of these games. The games that I did watch, I will let you know. And the games that I just kind of caught highlights and just kind of made notes, I will let you know that as well. We're going to kind of go back a little bit. We're going to go back to a game that happened on the 25th of June. And go ahead and start that off with Scotland A taking on Chile in their build-up match for a game that starts this Saturday. They have a 2-game series. This is the play-in spot for the Rugby World Cup, the Americas 2 spot. They will be playing the USA. Obviously, I have a reason to cover Chile because of Augusto Bohm, Dallas Jackals hooker that came in late in the season, and we just chopped it up, and I just got along with that dude. And it's cool to talk to somebody from an emerging rugby nation. Me being a big rugby guy, when I think of like the greats, I always obviously think of the Springboks, but I'll think of like the All Blacks, I'll think of some of those Wallabies teams. And when you're a rugby player in South America, they look at like Argentina as like, wow, we would love to play them, like they're such a high level. And it's really cool to kind of see that, like, kind of regionally what team you'll look up to, like, kids growing up in Samoa and Tonga, they look up to the All Blacks if they don't look up to their national team. And it's just kind of cool to see how that regionally fits in, and especially with Chile as like kind of an emerging nation in the sport of rugby union. So I did watch this game. I found it on YouTube. Somebody had uploaded it, and it was Chile taking on Scotland A. It was their first kind of taste of Tier 1 rugby, and the final score ended up being 45-5. Hoyland, Horn, and Price get some tries for McLean, and they get some of these tries for Scotland, and Santiago Edwards gets the lone try for Chile. This was their warm-up match. I will get a little bit later into the USA's warm-up match that they played Friday night in Houston, Texas. Then we will skip over to the Wednesday night game. We had the Māori All Blacks taking on Ireland, kind of their B squad, but Bundyaki did play, and I mean, really just putting it on them, 32-17. Brad Weber kind of getting the captaincy, a guy that's had heaps of time, not a great amount of All Blacks caps, but is usually considered a mainstay. Now, his relief off the bench, TJ Perenara, he's kind of become like what we know as the relief off the bench for the All Blacks, and the replacement for Aaron Smith, who despite what that guy seems to think about himself, I mean, I'm old. No, dude, you're still really, really solid at fly half. Probably one of the best fly halves, if not the best fly half on the planet, in my opinion, at the moment. And the Māori All Blacks just put it on Ireland. Like I said, 32-17, the final score. And that was one that was kind of like, I kind of saw it happening just because you looked at the strength of the Irish side and you looked at what the Māori All Blacks were putting out on the pitch. Clayton McMillan, the head coach of the Māori All Blacks, also the head coach of my Waikato Chiefs there in Super Rugby, just doing a great job with those Māori All Blacks boys, and I give them nothing but props and respect for those guys. Then we will go to the games on Friday, the 1st of July, and they had a tournament going on in Fiji, currently going on. Pacific Islands, it's the 3 Pacific Island nations plus an Australian A side. Obviously not the strongest Australia side because they're all currently in Australia taking on the Palms, the English there, and we will get to that a little bit later here as well. We had Samoa over Australia A by a score of 31-26. I don't want to butcher his name. Nigel Wong was the winning try scorer for Samoa. I get my words right there. And I kind of just caught highlights of this one. Now, the game after this, I watched the first like 5 minutes live and then went back and finished it. And it was Fiji and Tonga. This game, a big game for Tonga, as they got former Wallaby Israel Folau and former All Blacks Malakai Fekitoa and Siali, or Charles Pitatau. I'm going to call him Siali Pitatau, and I was really expecting, I did pick Fiji to win this game, but I kind of was expecting a little bit more of a fight with those three big names on that Tongan starting 15, and it was really good. Any of you guys that follow me on social media, you saw me, I was sending screenshots of those guys, leading up to the national anthem and then the start of the Sipi Tau, which I was really, really excited, because it's like, look, somebody like Israel Folau, yes, he is very polarizing in the world of rugby. Do I agree with what he said? No. Do I believe that he should have been fired? Look, if it was in the contract for him to not do that anymore, then yes, he did deserve to get canned by Australia. But besides that point, the man is a hell of a rugby player. We've all seen it. One of the best one of the highest scorers in the history of Super Rugby, and the guy can play still. I don't think he's on the twilight of his career. I think he's got a good couple of years left in the tank before he hits that twilight of his career. And then you get a guy like, Siali Pitatau, who's obviously at the end of his career, and Malakai Fekitoa, who's probably getting towards the twilight of his career. Absolutely amazing. A World Cup winner with New Zealand back in 2015. And personally, one of my favorite players when I first started following Super Rugby. He was playing for the Landers at the time, and he was one of my favorite players. So it was really cool, but unfortunately, they didn't even muster anything. There were a couple of disallowed tries for Tonga in the game, I think 3 total. It ended up being 36-0. That wasn't even that was a bit, I expected a bit more of a fight from the Sea Eagle, the mighty Sea Eagle, but you guys see me, I'm always going to support Tonga. You guys have seen me on social media. I've done the Tonga games live and stuff like that. I've just always looked at that team as being my blood may bleed with the South African Springboks, but I have a soft spot for those Tongans for some reason, and I don't know what it is. And every time I've met Tongan rugby players, regardless of where I'm at in the world, I always seem to get along with them really, really well for some reason. I guess it's just, maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe it's just because I've got so much respect for those guys and just the people and the heritage and the culture. And, every time I meet a Tongan, that's my toko. They're my brothers. So hopefully we see a little bit more of a fight next week as they take on Samoa, I believe, and then Fiji will take on Australia A next weekend. Then we get to the Friday night game here stateside, down, actually just a quick little 4.5-5 hour drive down the road, down 45 here in Texas, to the Space City, as they call it, Screwston, as any rappers will call it, Big Terrible Texas, the H Houston, H-Town, whatever you want to call it, Aviva Stadium, one of the nicest stadiums in the United States for the game of rugby. And we had the USA Eagles taking on the French Barbarians. This was a pretty interesting French Barbarian side. You had quite a few guys with a lot of French caps on it. Obviously, albeit these were guys in their mid to late 30s. So guys that were done with their international test careers, and this was actually a pretty entertaining game. And then the final score ended up being 26-21. Dyer Anananu both had tries. AJ Mcgenty had penalty kicks at the 44th and 52nd minute. The French were pushing late, but it ended up being a final score of 26-21 in favor of the USA Eagles. They will now, I think they just started getting there, I think via Paul Mullen. They are in Chile right now, getting ready to play game 1 next weekend against Chile. Game 1 of 2 of the qualifier for the Rugby World Cup, that America's 2 slot. This year's Uruguay got the America's 1. Obviously, Argentina automatically qualifies for finishing in the top 12. So we will see how that goes this weekend. I mean, personally, having talked to Augusto, we already saw that Spain has been disqualified, and I was like, dude, wouldn't it be weird if you had 4 Spanish-speaking teams in the World Cup for the first time in history? that would be cool to me, just to say. But like, yes, obviously I don't want the USA to qualify, but like that was just something that kind of came to like the side of my mind. I was like, dude, wouldn't that be cool if you had 4 Spanish-speaking teams qualify for the World Cup for the first time in history? Just because like, it's not, you know, in Argentina, it's all these countries, it's considered a tertiary sport, but it's still cool to see those countries kind of put up a fight and put their hands up. But the big guy for me that kind of made a difference, and we didn't get to see him a whole lot back in the last international season, was Mcgenty. He had been injured. I know he came in relief for a game, but that guy's a really, really solid number 10, and he really is a field general. He is a difference maker when he is on the pitch. Major League Rugby has provided a way for us to keep as many of these guys domestically as possible. We still have some of the big names that go overseas, like Mcgenty, like Ruben de Haas. They still go and play on those big contracts over in Europe, the Premiership and whatever, and it's cool to see that. But it's also really cool that we're starting to bring a lot of those guys back home and they can stay here domestically. We can just, you know, rise the level of competition up here to keep them getting better. But I don't blame AJ or Ruben de Haas for going overseas. It is some quality footy over there, and they're just going to get nothing but better. And it was good to see Mcgenty out on the pitch. Then we had another kind of tertiary game. Canada already eliminated, unfortunately, from the Rugby World Cup. Liam Murray, Dallas Jackal, guy I interviewed at Anton's. They ended up beating the brakes off of Belgium 45-0. I didn't watch this game. I just kind of looked at the stats online, and it was never even close. Obviously, Belgium, a team that's never qualified for the World Cup. But 45-0. I believe that Canada plays Spain next. Then we get to the big boys here. The Northern Hemisphere, 2 teams that will go to the Southern Hemisphere and play their games. I kind of just picked the bigger ones. And like I said, I will let you know the games that I watched and the games that I did not watch. But I did pick France as a big winner over Japan. They ended up beating Japan 42-23. I don't even think DuPont even played at all. I didn't watch this game at all. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It was just something that just didn't have enough time to really catch it and watch it with all the other games going on that I was trying to pay attention to. But France wins big 42-23 over Japan. Then we have a game that I've watched bits and pieces of, but predominantly just watched the highlights. We had a veteran-heavy Michael Chica. This was his debut head coaching there for Los Pumas, taking on Scotland. I do a lot of jokes about Scotland. They have all these players from like Johannesburg, Scotland, Durban, Scotland, Kimberley, Scotland, Cape Town, Scotland, Pretoria, Scotland, Bloemfontein, Scotland. I mean, it's all these towns in Scotland that have the same name as South African cities. I mean, it's just weird. They have a lot of South Africans on their team. And this was an Argentina team that, like, Michael Chica, I guess knowing that he doesn't have a time to really build, he just went veteran heavy on it. And they ended up getting the win 26-18 over Scotland there in Argentina. Another team I did pick Scotland to win by a pretty slim margin, and that's congrats to Michael Chica. I don't have anything against that guy. I thought he was a hell of a coach when he coached the Wallabies. I just didn't like the Wallabies. I think he did really, really well, and then resources and players kind of ran low, so he kind of just became a mediocre coach after a while. It does happen, unfortunately. Next game we had, I've already done a recap for, but 32-29, the Springboks barely victorious over Wales. Damien Valemza with the kick in the overtime, 83rd minute, I believe, to win it for the green and gold. Absolutely horrible game. I've already went into it. It was a very ugly victory for the Springboks, but it was a victory nonetheless. I'm hoping that Jacques cleans up some of these things over the next week, and we get a wrap and a stranglehold on these issues, because nobody really played spectacularly. Jasper Vise had a great game, but some of our stars were non-factors. Like, where was Ebenezer the whole game? Never really saw him doing much. Faf de Klerk here and there, but not really. These guys that we expect to be big time names for our team and really taking control really just didn't really show up, and it felt we looked definitely a bit rusty in the game. Then we had a game that I just finished watching, and this was Australia taking on England. I did pick the Wallabies. Now, I had gone back earlier in the video and talked about a year. Wow, what a year, a difference a year has made. I would do nothing but talk cock about the Wallabies, the rubbish bin that is Australia rugby. And to me, I think Dave Rennie might have took the fire extinguisher a bit to that rubbish bin and kind of put the fire out. I do see the Wallabies as a team on the rise. I think Dave Rennie has them going in the right direction. As much as I hate Quade Santini Cooper, I do see that as a great selection for them. Samu Karivi, all these guys, he is pushing the team in the correct direction. Michael Hooper is still one of the best flankers in the entire world, in my opinion. So I probably won't use the word rubbish bin fire with them. I'm just going to call them rubbish because I don't like them, but like they are definitely a team on the rise. I do not think they are going to be a pushover when the Rugby Championship. I'm going to be worried. Yes, we did lose to them last year. I really worry about it even more this year. They are getting better, and I don't think Super Rugby is really a true indication of what direction Australian rugby is going in. I think the international test season will be a true indication, and I think the Wallabies are on the move up. They're moving up. I think they're moving in the right direction, and like I said, what's good for the Southern Hemisphere is good for all of us. Let us have 4 dominant teams. Cool, I don't mind at all. But this was an ugly game early. Red card within the first 30 minutes for Australia. They go down to man. Yellow card. I watched the incident. Guy headbutts. It's a lock that headbutts one of their players. I mean, pretty obvious. It was a red card. He was done. And it doesn't really tell the tale because at the 79th minute, it was 30 to 14, 30 to 15. And England gets a try in the last minute and then gets another try in the 83rd or 84th minute. And that's the only reason it ends up being 30-28. Owen Farrell with his smug face, he was put in his place proper. You didn't get to really see a lot of Marcus Smith, and I think that's something that does make a difference. Marcus Smith is the future of English rugby, and if Eddie Jones does not see that, I think he's kind of, personally, my opinion about English rugby is I feel like Eddie Jones is just mailing it in at this point anyways. He's not going to be there after the World Cup. We already know that. If England's smart, they will get rid of him as soon as the World Cup's over. I just don't see him going any further with the team. But Samu, Faianga, and Patia get the tries for Australia. Genji, Van Poortvliet, and Urindel get the tries for England in that one. Way to go, Wallabies. The rubbish bin, but not rubbish bin fire anymore. And then I guess the big one on the week internationally, this was the one that I picked Ireland. I looked at recent form. We all saw what Ireland did to the All Blacks in Ireland last international season. I mean, they destroyed them. I mean, they picked them apart piece by piece. James Lowe, the former Kiwi, the former Māori All Black, had a hell of a game. It was just, they picked them apart. It was clinical. Andy Farrell's the head coach of Ireland. Owen Farrell's dad, yes. It was clinical, man. They took them apart piece by piece by piece last year, and we can kind of think back to recent results. They beat them. The All Blacks were in the midst of like an 18-19 game win streak. They got beat by Ireland in Chicago a few years back, and I mean, like, yes, I know the overall record isn't that great, but of recent, Ireland's kind of had the All Blacks number a bit, in games, and they've been able to kind of be clinical about it, but not in this game, man. It started out looking okay, but it pretty much became the All Black show pretty quickly. Earls, Gingrose, and Bundy Aki, who played double duty, played both games this week. Congrats to him. Tip your hat to that guy putting in double duty. The New Zealand-born player who moved to Ireland to work at a bank and just became a rugby player. I don't know if there's any truth in that, but he does play for Ireland now. The star, the man of the match for me, obviously, and I think a lot of people, was the 2 tries with Artie Savea. What I remember when he made his debut, his brother was the biggest name in rugby. Julian Savea was the biggest name in rugby in 2015. He was like the leading scorer in that tournament, and then he kind of just fell off defensively. You saw the rise of Rico Iwani coming in that number 11 jersey in 2017, and it kind of pushed Julian off to the side, and he's never really been able to regain his step. He went to Europe, took a pretty big contract to play in France there, and it just never really panned out. Now he's back in New Zealand and doing very, very well in Super Rugby. Will he ever get a call up in the black jersey again? I don't think so, but that's just my personal opinion. But Artie Savea kind of went from being just kind of a name out there to really becoming a leader. He obviously captained the side a couple of times in the last year, and just a really good dude. If any of you guys follow him on social media, he's just a really good guy. Like, I think he's just an interesting character to watch videos and watch him do interviews. Just a really just chill dude, and I do enjoy it. I'm glad that he's having success on the pitch as well as off the pitch. Jordy Barrett gets the first try of the game for the All Blacks. The better Barrett brother, in my opinion. I just kind of prefer him over Bowden. Seven Reese gets a try. Quinn Tupaya gets a try. And on debut, Peter Gus Soakala, the chief, the Waikato chief. And it was just, this was clinical. Like, New Zealand the All Blacks took Ireland apart. And like I said, I had picked Ireland to win this game, not by much. I think I picked them to win by like 8 or 9 points, and it ended up being New Zealand winning by 23 points. I've gone back and I've already locked my picks in on the Super Brew app for the next week, and I did pick Ireland to win again. So we'll see how that turns out. Obviously, there's no money involved in Super Brew. It's just my favoritism. I don't hate the All Blacks. I just think that Ireland has had their number, but not this week. They didn't. But that is that. With that, we've got another weekend of this coming up this weekend. All kinds of games. Obviously, the USA playing Chile, Canada and Spain. We've got another round of these same teams. You've got France and Japan, Scotland and Argentina, South Africa and Wales, Wallabies in England, and the All Blacks in Ireland. Flosports, the official carrier for these games here in North America. Wherever you're at, check your local provider. Once again, it was really, really great seeing fans in the stands in South Africa, and then all the videos that have emerged of drunken antics after the game. Nothing like a drunk South African. That's a perfect blend of absolutely loose as a goose crazy and just weird at the same time. But it was just really good just to see people all around the world getting out and watching rugby this weekend, regardless of whether it was teams trying to get into the World Cup, teams just playing. International Test Rugby is one of my favorite times of the year, and I absolutely look forward to it every single year when it happens. It's kind of like that happy thing, and then the Autumn Internationals come, and the Rugby Championship, and we've got the All Blacks coming to South Africa this time, and it's just kind of like, it's going to be a fun year for rugby union. But I will get ready for the next lineups when they do the next South Africa lineup. We'll see what changes are made. I better not see Elton Yankees dress. That's just my personal opinion. I think epitome of a bunch of other Springbok supporters. And it's just going to be interesting to see what changes, if any, are made in all of these teams. Obviously, a clean sweep by the Southern Hemisphere in this first round. Will we continue in the next round? Will somebody fall? Who knows what happens. I'd like to see all of us make clean sweeps in the Southern Tour, or at least all win our tournaments 2-1 or whatever in the 3-game series. We'll just see how it goes coming from there. So tomorrow is 4th of July, obviously, here in the U.S. I do have the day off. Went out with the girlfriend last night to watch some fireworks north of town here. We're gonna go out this afternoon and watch some more. And just enjoy the holiday and the fireworks, because they're always cool to look at. It's just a fun time in America right now. People are cooking out, just a great time of year, but it is bloody hot. But until then, I will talk to you guys later. Hope you're all safe. Cheers, guys.